I feel some obligation to mention WrestleMania briefly. Big event for the WWE. This is the first WrestleMania without Vince. It's always interesting to see like what the crisis communications and PR for a situation like Vince McMahon's abuse is. And what I found really interesting was, even though like she's got the name McMahon, she was named on some of the lawsuits, I thought his daughter was going to be booted out of the place. Like she can't come back. And I even thought at that rate, her husband, Triple H, who's been like in charge of creative for years now, I thought he would maybe have to hightail it. I know that Brock Lesnar is wrapped up in some of this stuff too. But what they did was at WrestleMania, they like, I think they had like a publicity mandate to push on the audience really hard. You are in a new era of wrestling. It is the Triple H era. Stephanie is part of it because they had Triple H come out and open the show, and they had Stephanie open night 2. And everybody, the whole audience, it's 100,000 people in the stadium. They all went ape shit for these two personalities. During they do a Hall of Fame induction before the show, and all of the speeches were about like what an absolute, man of integrity Triple H is. They're changing some of the branding. Like for years, Vince pushed the sports entertainment thing. They're crossing that out. They're calling it professional wrestling. They repeatedly, The Rock is on the board, obviously, and The Rock was a big part of everything. So The Rock was a big part of like pushing some of this new terminology and this new kind of like publicity pivot. And so he kept saying like new era. It's a new era. It's a new era. Wrestling is cool again. Wrestling is cool again. Like we did it. We made wrestling cool again. Like, so they were really pushing that.
Pro wrestling is cool once again. It's been decades. Pro wrestling is undeniably exciting once again.
This Cody Rhodes, he's the son of Dusty Rhodes and the brother of Goldust. He's their big guy right now. And it was originally supposed to be Rock versus Roman Reigns, his cousin. Roman Reigns has had the title for like 3 years. They've really pushed him as like the new John Cena. He's pretty huge in wrestling now. Still a little bit divisive in terms of like, is this guy boring? He's no Rock, he's no Triple H, he's no Undertaker. He's maybe a little more Brock Lesnar, I would say, he's got that Paul Heyman guy who I love, who kind of is his voice. But it was supposed to be Rock versus Roman. But then the audience reacted pretty strongly and said like, no, we want Cody. We want this Cody story. I watched an interview with Triple H where he said like, I kind of knew that was going to happen. And he said like, well, the fact that they were so pissed that we were going to go with Rock Roman was kind of a good sign. He's like, he was talking to Logan Paul. Logan Paul is a wrestler too. He was in one of the events. Oh. And he said, he was like, on YouTube with you guys, you got to be worried about really bad publicity and cancellations and stuff. He's like, for us, we're just trying to connect with the audience. That's all we're doing is like entertaining and connecting with the audience. So if the audience goes apeshit because we booked the wrong match, that's kind of a good thing. It just means like they're engaged, they're not neutral, and we can kind of pivot with them. So they instead did a 2-night thing where night 1 was Rock and Roman. Roman and Rock joined forces. Rock turned heel versus Cody and Seth Rollins. And then the following night, it was like, if Rock and Roman win, the heels, then it's bloodline rules the following night, no disqualifications. You can hit people with a chair. There can be interference for Roman, and Roman will win for sure after 3 years of holding on to the title. And so you kind of knew if you know your wrestling, it's like wrestling 101, that gives Cody an opportunity for some really exciting intervention on his behalf. And that's what happened. So then the question is, who's going to intervene on Cody's behalf? And the answer, spoilers, was John Cena. So John Cena comes running out to, one of the biggest movie stars right now, comes running out to the ring. The Rock is pissed. He comes out. There's a big WrestleMania moment. Cena and Rock are staring at each other. That's cool stuff. They have a little fight. Rock is winning. Rock takes out his belt. The belt says Mama Rhodes on it because he kept being like, I'm going to beat you in front of your mother. And then the lights go out. And normally when the lights go out at WrestleMania, it could only be one guy, The Undertaker. The bell dongs. Undertaker shows up and he chokeslams Rock, and Cody Rhodes wins. And everybody's crazy. Oh my God. It's because 3 years. It was like they built up the story for 3 years. And so I think the wrestling fans were very happy that night. Not just because they fulfilled this cool storyline thing, but also because of, this thing with Vince and what's the future of wrestling. And so it was a pretty victorious wrestling night. And they released right around the same time, they released a documentary on Peacock about Bray Wyatt, the Undertaker and Kane type stuff, the superheroes, the super villains, the masked people that have superpowers and shit.
Yeah.
They kind of got rid of that for a while. They didn't do it as much. I think they try to keep it somewhat grounded and about wrestling. But Bray Wyatt came up with this. He's actually the son of IRS, of Irwin R. Shyster.
Oh, okay.
And he came up with this amazing gimmick where he's a cult leader in the swamp. And he's got these gigantic rednecks that follow him around. One of them wears a sheep's mask. He comes out with a lantern right next to his face, illuminating his face. And it's kind of like what people go to it for a while. It's like one of the main things you're paying for when you go to a wrestling event is everybody turns on their cell phone lights, and he calls them his fireflies. So you're out in the swamp when he comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he rambles like a psychopath, and then his in-ring stuff was really interesting. He would do this kind of like inverse crab walk, or he did a move called Sister Abigail, or that's his sister, and he kisses you on the forehead and kills you. And he was so inventive, and he was so creative. He ended up doing like a Pee-wee's Playhouse horror movie thing at one point during COVID. And I think this dude should have been a film director, or he should have been in movies or something, because he just had a charisma and a thing that not very few wrestlers have. He was doing stuff that's not wrestling at a certain point. I mean, he's a great in-ring performer, but he was doing stuff that was really exciting. And some of it didn't work. There was a version of his character where he lit himself on fire. Now he had to wrestle in like a charred outfit, and it wasn't working. And but he obviously the life of the party, obviously a very charismatic person, just a very special person. And dude, like 6 months ago, he died. He's 35. He died of a heart attack.
Oh my God.
And he 4 children, little children.
Oh no.
And very, very, very tragic. Not just because it's always tragic, but the untapped potential was so obvious. And yeah, and one of the things that struck me about the documentary was the people that were interviewed about his death, like the wrestlers, his family. It's a little unusual to have an in-depth retrospective like 6 months after the guy died, and they're all talking like they haven't accepted his loss yet.
Oh, really?
A lot of them were like, I kind of don't believe it still. I feel like maybe just haven't seen him in a few months. There is that, when somebody goes, there is that sort of surreal period where you're like, wait, like, because if it's not somebody you saw every day, then it's not abnormal to go without that person's presence for a little while. So pretty sad stuff, but a great documentary. I think generally a good tribute to his creative work. Certainly, really incredible creative work.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.